The slap that echoed across the lobby, the sound was sharp, unnatural, a crack that didn't belong in a five-star lobby scented with citrus and money. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A bellhop froze with luggage half lifted. A phone slipped from someone's hand and clattered against marble. In the center of it all stood a black woman in a tailored coat, spine straight, eyes steady, absorbing the moment everyone else was too stunned to process. The hotel manager's hand fell back to his side as if he'd merely swatted away a fly, his face flushed with authority, certainty, and the comfort of being believed that no one rushed to her defense, not the concierge, not the security guard who suddenly found the floor fascinating. A few guests looked away, embarrassed, as if dignity were contagious. Others stared openly, hungry for spectacle. The humiliation was complete, delivered publicly, efficiently, and with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the system would protect him. In this room, power had already chosen a side. She didn't shout. She didn't stagger. She didn't reach for her cheek. That calm confused people more than tears ever could. Calm suggested control, and control wasn't supposed to belong to someone who looked like her in a place like this. The assumption settled instantly. She must have deserved it, must have said something wrong, must have forgotten her place. That lie moved faster than truth ever does. The manager spoke again, louder now, explaining himself to the room, performing authority for an audience eager to accept it. His words blurred together, but the message was clear. He was in charge. She was not. Around them, luxury hummed on, indifferent, expensive, secure. What no one noticed was the way her eyes lifted, not in fear, but in calculation. What no one understood was that silence wasn't surrender. It was assessment. In the frozen seconds after the slap, a story everyone thought they understood was already unraveling. Thread by thread, somewhere, a chandelier hummed softly. Credit cards slid across counters. Life pretended nothing had fractured. But in her stillness, something ancient and unmovable took shape, a refusal to shrink, a memory of doors once closed and later kicked open. The room mistook restraint for weakness, mistook patience for permission, and in that mistake, sealed its fate. The silence thickened, daring anyone to question what they had just witnessed, daring the truth to arrive without apology or warning, because what no one in that lobby realized, not yet, was that this woman didn't just work in hotels, she owned them. They thought she was just another guest. She arrived hours earlier, unnoticed, the way truth often does. No entourage, no announcement, just a quiet step through revolving glass into a lobby trained to recognize wealth by volume. Her coat was simple, her bag unbranded, her posture unhurried. The front desk glanced up, then away. A pause stretched. Another guest was helped first, then another. Minutes passed. A request for a room key was met with a sigh. A question about amenities earned a rehearsed smile and no answer. Someone suggested she wait. Someone else suggested she move aside. None of it was loud enough to protest, sharp enough to prove. It was the soft architecture of exclusion, built brick by brick, by people who knew how to deny without saying no. She noticed everything. The sideways looks, the way a clerk spoke slower, louder, as if volume could fix imagination, the security guard who hovered too close, the laughter that followed her steps and stopped when she turned. She met it all with stillness, with the discipline learned by those who have survived rooms that test them on arrival. Across the lobby, the manager watched. He saw the delays, the glances, the performance of superiority. He said nothing. Silence, after all, is a choice, and he chose it easily. His authority settled like a ceiling, low and heavy, giving permission without words. This was how systems worked best, when cruelty didn't need instruction. When she finally reached the desk, the manager intervened, not to help, but to assert. Questions came wrapped in suspicion. Policies appeared from nowhere. His tone carried the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Each sentence pressed the same message: "You do not belong, and I decide." She listened. She nodded once. She did not explain herself. Dignity can be mistaken for compliance by people who have never needed it. The staff took cues from his posture, his smirk, his comfort. Power, when unchallenged, multiplies. What they couldn't see was the ledger in her mind, the careful noting of names, times, choices. She wasn't waiting for permission. She was gathering proof. His confidence grew as witnesses stayed quiet. He straightened his jacket, enjoying the audience he thought he had earned. A policy binder appeared like a shield. A joke landed softly among staff who wanted to belong to power. The air shifted from neglect to challenge, from avoidance to threat. He mistook her composure as an invitation, her restraint as approval, her patience as fear. Around them, the system leaned in, ready to applaud authority, ready to excuse harm, ready to confuse order with justice. And then the manager decided silence meant permission. When disrespect turns physical, the manager's voice rose, not in argument, but in performance, loud enough to summon witnesses, sharp enough to rewrite the moment in his favor. He accused her of trespassing, of causing disruption, of refusing to follow rules he invented mid-sentence. Each claim stacked on the last, building a narrative where authority sounded like truth simply because it was amplified. Guests slowed their steps. Staff drifted closer. A circle formed, curiosity dressed up as concern. She tried to speak once. He cut her off, tried again. He stepped forward, crowding space, daring her to retreat. His finger jabbed the air between them, a metronome of entitlement. The words became accusations, then warnings, then threats wrapped in policy language. Security stayed still. The desk clerks watched their manager, not her. Loyalty, in places like this, flows upward. Then it happened. No warning, no escalation left to climb. His hand moved fast, decisive, practiced in certainty. The sound landed before the meaning did, a crack that silenced the room and rearranged the air. Her head turned slightly with the force, not dramatically. Not enough to satisfy those waiting for collapse. For half a second, no one breathed. A few staff members looked down, suddenly busy. One smiled, small and quick, as if relieved the tension had finally broken. A guest lifted a phone, then lowered it, unsure which story would be safer to remember. No one stepped forward. No one said stop. Power had made its choice, and the room honored it. Anger surged, hot and immediate, but it met a wall of expectation. She was supposed to react, to prove him right, to give the crowd the justification it craved. Instead, she stood there, cheek warm, eyes clear, absorbing not just the blow, but the verdict being silently delivered. This was what protection looked like when it favored the aggressor. The manager exhaled, satisfied, already rehearsing his version. Apologies hovered on lips that would never speak them. The system closed ranks, efficient, familiar, cruel. She felt the weight of every unspoken excuse pressing down, the old reflexes of deference rising and then settling. This was not her first test, only the most public. Around her, the lobby resumed its shallow breathing, eager to move on, eager to forget. The manager enjoyed the stillness, mistaking it for victory, mistaking fear for respect. He had crossed a line and believed the building would hide it. What happened next didn't involve shouting or tears or pleas for mercy. It involved a pause, a breath, and a phone lifted with deliberate calm as eyes watched, unaware that consequences had already begun moving toward them silently, inexorably. 9 minutes of silence that terrified the room. She didn't cry. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't reach for sympathy or permission. Instead, she stepped away from the desk with controlled precision, creating a small pocket of space in a room that suddenly felt too tight. From her bag, she took out her phone, not hurried, not shaking, and placed a single call. Her voice stayed low, measured, professional. No names were spoken aloud. No explanations offered. Just facts, delivered cleanly, followed by one sentence that carried weight far beyond its volume. At first, the lobby dismissed it. A few staff members exchanged glances and smirked, relief creeping in. Someone whispered that she was calling. A lawyer. Someone else laughed softly, already certain how this would end. The manager leaned back, crossing his arms, enjoying the pause. He believed silence was retreat. He believed control was permanent. Minute one passed. Nothing happened. Conversations cautiously restarted. Shoes clicked against marble again. The illusion of normal returned, fragile but convincing. She stood still, eyes forward, listening, waiting. Not hoping. Minute 3. A phone buzzed behind the desk. A supervisor frowned at a screen and turned it face down. Another buzz followed, then another. The laughter thinned. Smiles faded too quickly to hide. Someone straightened their jacket. Someone else stepped away from the crowd, suddenly busy elsewhere. Minute 5. The manager checked his watch. His confidence flickered, just briefly, then hardened. He told a joke that didn't land. No one laughed this time. 2 employees whispered urgently, eyes darting between her and the elevators. Security shifted position, uncertain which direction authority now faced. Minute 7. A tablet chimed. A call was declined, then accepted. Color drained from a face that had been smug moments earlier. The manager's posture changed, shoulders tightening, jaw locking. The room sensed it before it understood it, that subtle tremor when power starts to move without permission. She remained exactly where she was, calm, untouchable. The silence stretched, no longer empty, but charged. Every second pressed harder. Then the last. The lobby was no longer a stage for humiliation. It had become a waiting room for consequences. Minute 8. Phones stayed still now. No one dared record. No one spoke. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if truth had weight. The manager swallowed, glancing toward exits, toward staff, toward anything that might restore certainty. Nothing did. Then the clock crossed minute 9. A soft chime echoed. Heads turned in unison as the elevators arrived, doors sliding open with deliberate grace. What stepped out next would shatter every assumption the room had made the truth. Walks in wearing a suit. Out of the elevator stepped 3 figures in dark suits, their presence rearranging the room without a word. Security straightened instinctively, radios lowering, eyes sharpening. The manager's smirk faltered as recognition crept across unfamiliar faces. These were not guests. They moved with purpose, scanning the lobby, measuring damage, claiming space. The crowd felt it, the sudden shift when authority changes hands, when certainty evaporates and questions begin forming silently. No one spoke, yet everyone sensed the balance had tipped permanently. They walked directly toward her, not past, not around, but to her side. One nodded with respect, another asked quietly if she was all right. The manager opened his mouth, then closed it, suddenly small. Titles floated in murmurs: vice president, regional director, words that drained color from faces nearby. Phones appeared, lifted cautiously now, recording history instead of spectacle. Whispers rippled outward as understanding landed, heavy, undeniable, rearranging loyalties in real time. The room inhaled together, bracing for irreversible truth. She turned then, finally, meeting the manager's eyes without heat or triumph. Her voice carried, steady and unadorned. She stated her name, then her role, and nothing more. No speech, no threat, just fact. The effect was immediate. Gasps cut through the silence. A clerk dropped a pen. The manager stepped back, authority, collapsing like scenery after a play ends. Respect arrived late but absolute, enforced not by volume, but by truth standing upright. Disbelief hardened into sudden compliance everywhere. Staff reacted in waves. Some froze, others rushed forward. Apologies tumbling over each other. Phones were no longer shy. Lenses rose openly, capturing panic, replacing pride. The manager tried to speak, but no one listened now. Security repositioned, subtly, decisively, facing him instead of her. In minutes, the hierarchy inverted. The woman remained composed, receiving respect without savoring it. Her calm became instruction, reminding everyone that power answers to character, not cruelty, and never to noise. The lesson settled quickly. When asked how she wished to proceed, she paused, allowing the weight of the moment to teach. She did not raise her chin. She did not smile. Leadership, she knew, was not theater. It was standards. Her gaze swept the lobby once, seeing fear, regret, calculation. Somewhere behind her, executives waited. Somewhere ahead, consequences lined up, patient, precise. The manager realized too late that mercy had passed, and accountability was no longer negotiable. The room held its breath. Together now. This was the moment stories turn, when victims become authors of outcomes. She spoke again, calmly, naming actions, naming failures, naming responsibility. The manager shrank with each word. Staff understood. What silence had cost them? Cameras captured the reckoning, not for revenge, but record. Justice did not roar. It stood still, unmistakable. But she didn't stop at firing one man. The choice she made next would redefine the building, the brand, and everyone who enabled what happened that day forward. Why one apology wasn't enough. The manager's voice broke first. Apologies spilled out fast, rehearsed, desperate, aimed anywhere they might stick. He blamed stress, misunderstanding, policy confusion, anything but himself. Around him, staff followed suit, a chorus of regret arriving only after consequences had entered the room. Words like sorry and mistake floated freely now, cheapened by their timing. The air filled with pleading, with promises to do better, with sudden respect that felt borrowed, not earned. She listened without interruption. Leadership, she understood, meant allowing people to reveal themselves fully. When the manager finished, she spoke, not loudly, but clearly enough that every corner of the lobby heard. An apology, she said, addresses a moment. What happened here was not a moment. It was a pattern. The slap was only the visible fracture, the crack that exposed rot beneath polished floors and mission statements. She named the failures one by one. Policies designed to protect guests had been ignored. Training meant to prevent abuse had been treated as paperwork. Authority had been confused with dominance, and silence mistaken for professionalism. The staff shifted as each truth landed. None of this required malice, she explained. It required neglect. Systems fail not only through cruelty, but through comfort. Her gaze moved across the room, steady, inclusive, uncompromising. When disrespect becomes routine, everyone learns it. When misconduct goes unchallenged, it multiplies. She spoke of how cultures are built, not by slogans on walls, but by what leaders tolerate on ordinary days. Every laugh, every turned back, every quiet acceptance had reinforced the belief that harm was permissible if delivered by the right person. Asterisk, some staff nodded, tears forming. Others stiffened, defensive. Accountability rarely feels fair to those unused to it. She acknowledged their fear without softening her stance. This was not about punishment, she said. It was about responsibility. Leadership is not proven in comfort, but in correction. And correction cannot begin with excuses. The manager tried again, offering resignation, restitution, anything to narrow the scope. She declined with a gentle shake of her head. Removing one man would not fix a culture that protected him. The room grew still as understanding spread. This was larger than an incident. It was an indictment of habits, incentives, and silence. She paused, letting the truth breathe, letting it hurt where it needed to. Then she straightened decision, settling into place, and the weight of what came next pressed down on everyone listening. Her calm did not invite negotiation. It demanded reflection. In that stillness, reputations, careers, and assumptions recalculated. She reminded them that leadership inherits consequences, not just titles, and that harm unaddressed becomes policy by default. The lobby felt smaller, as if walls leaned closer to hear. People understood they were being measured, not judged, and measurement can be unforgiving. She inhaled once, exhaled slowly, and prepared to choose. Every face waited, aware that what followed would redraw futures, dismantle comfort, and expose the cost of standing by when injustice announces itself plainly in this place today together. Entire staff is fired. Here's why. She delivered the decision without theatrics, without anger, without raising her voice. The entire shift was terminated, effective immediately. Gasps rippled outward as comprehension caught up to words. This was not vengeance. It was instruction. She explained that cultures do not fail overnight. They are curated daily by what leaders allow to stand unchallenged. When disrespect becomes routine, it stops feeling wrong. When silence protects harm, silence becomes policy. She told them leadership is not about individual innocence. It is about collective responsibility. No one needed to strike her to share accountability. Watching, laughing, turning away, following cues from power instead of conscience, these were choices too. Her tone remained even, but the message cut deep. Employment is trust, she said, and trust dissolves when dignity is optional. Phones were already up, recording. Clips spread before the shock settled. By the time security escorted staff out, the footage was everywhere, captioned, dissected, amplified. Comment sections ignited. Some called her ruthless. Others called her brave. Hashtags bloomed in real time, demanding accountability, defending standards, arguing over whether consequences should hurt this much. She did not watch the reactions. She understood them. Justice always unsettles people who benefit from comfort. She spoke once more, addressing the room and the cameras equally. This decision, she said, was not about punishment but reset. Culture is enforced by who you tolerate, and she refused to tolerate a system that trained people to look away. Rebuilding would take time, but compromise would cost more. Outside the lobby, the story grew teeth. News alerts buzzed. Panels debated. Intent versus impact. Strangers projected their own fears onto her calm. Support poured in from workers who had endured similar rooms, similar silences. Critics warned of overreach. The divide widened, sharp and loud, exactly as moments like this demand. By nightfall, analysts framed it as a referendum on leadership in public spaces. Timelines filled with side-by-side clips, slowed, annotated, argued over. Survivors recognized the pattern immediately. So did those who feared it. Donations rose. Petitions formed. Counter hashtags appeared. The story escaped the building and entered kitchens, commutes, and classrooms, forcing people to choose where they stood when authority crossed a line and expected gratitude in return. Every share became a signal, every comment a confession, every silence another vote cast in public that demanded clarity now from everyone watching. Inside, the building felt hollowed out, stripped of pretense. She stood amid the quiet aftermath, aware that the real trial was only beginning. Firing a shift was easy compared to surviving the judgment of millions. Still, she did not flinch. Leadership, she knew, meant choosing standards over approval and living with the noise that followed. But the internet's reaction changed everything. The video that sparked a national debate by morning. The footage was everywhere, looping. Across screens, large and small, stripped of context, and then rebuilt with meaning. Commentators argued over frames like evidence, slowing the slap, freezing the silence after. Support arrived from unexpected places, workers, veterans, faith leaders, immigrants who recognized the posture of dismissal instantly. They spoke about dignity as something learned early and defended late, about rooms that test you before you. Speak. Critics pushed back hard. They called the decision extreme, unfair, performative. They warned about precedent, about power used too broadly, about feelings replacing policy. Supporters answered just as fiercely, pointing to patterns too. Systems that only change when discomfort becomes unavoidable. The arguments spilled into timelines, studios, dinner tables, classrooms. Everyone had an opinion because everyone recognized the imbalance. Hashtags collided, then merged, then fractured again. The video became shorthand for experiences people struggled to name. For some, it was about race without saying race. For others, it was about authority without accountability. For many, it was about being watched, measured, and dismissed before a word could land. The hotel faded into the background, replaced by a larger question about who gets protected when harm happens in plain sight. She remained silent as the noise grew. Silence this time was not permission, it was restraint. While panels debated her motives, messages poured in privately, stories shared quietly, gratitude mixed with fear. The country argued not just about what she did, but about what they would have done, what they wished they had done, what they were taught to endure. The debate hardened lines and softened some hearts. It forced people to choose language, to pick sides, to reveal assumptions. And as the story stretched beyond a building into a mirror, anticipation tightened around one unanswered question. When the woman at the center finally spoke, would she defend herself or redefine the moment entirely? The nation leaned forward, waiting for her voice. Her final words changed the narrative. She spoke at last through a written statement, brief but deliberate, released without fanfare. There was no anger in it, no demand for sympathy, no attempt to win the internet. She wrote about standards, about the responsibility that comes with authority, about why leadership begins long before a crisis and is proven after one. Justice, she said, does not require rage to be real. She refused the role of victim and rejected the costume of avenger. What happened, she explained, was not personal, even though it was painful. It was professional. It was about systems that reward confidence over conscience and mistake silence for loyalty. Her decision, she said, was guided by a single question. What culture does this protect? She acknowledged disagreement without defensiveness. Debate was healthy, she wrote, because discomfort signals growth. But dignity is not negotiable, and safety cannot depend on appearances or assumptions. She spoke to workers directly, reminding them that power is borrowed, not owned, and that every position carries a duty to interrupt harm, not excuse it. There was gratitude in her words, offered quietly to those who recognized themselves in the moment and felt seen. There was resolve, too, a promise to rebuild with intention, to train for courage as seriously as competence, to make respect measurable. She did not promise perfection. She promised standards. The tone disarmed critics who expected fury and inspired supporters who recognized restraint as strength. Calm replaced chaos. Truth outpaced ego. The story, once fueled by outrage, settled into something steadier, something harder to dismiss. In choosing composure, she denied her opponents the caricature. They wanted and offered a model they couldn't ignore. It reframed leadership as service, not spectacle. Her closing line carried no accusation, only clarity, the kind that lingers after screens go dark and arguments fade. It sounded less like a defense and more like a reminder, simple enough to remember and strong enough to endure. Power isn't proven by who you can slap, it's revealed by how you treat those you think can't fight back.